You're watching an interesting local show on Rogers TV and you want to know more. That's when you head to rogerstv.com. Our website provides more information about our programs, our hosts, our schedule, and about how you too can get involved with Rogers TV. Visit us online at rogerstv.com.
Of Living Well, Giving Well on Rogers Grey County. I'm Fred Wallace along with Denise Reid. Our program today is being, our host charity is the Women's Center of Grey Bruce, and we want to thank Stacey Berry, who was a guest on a previous edition of Living Well, Giving Well. Stacey certainly did a good job of talking about the many services, even though services isn't necessarily her bag, fundraising is her bag.
Well, yes, I think it's good for our viewers to understand what the Women's Center is about, the opportunities that people can give, whether it be cash, as we said, cash was king, or gift cards, or just sheets, pillows, anything that you can do to help out, and the programming that they offer.
Yeah, and Living Well, Giving Well, we're asking people to make a consideration when they do a will to leave a legacy gift or a gift to a charity or organization that means something to them or to the community, and certainly the Women's Center would definitely fit that criteria, and you can get more information by going to thewomenscenter.org.
I always learn, when we do these episodes, and I think with Erroll, and I didn't realize it could be a close connection between the Women's Center, which I should have, but I didn't. And I appreciate, Erroll, that you're with us again this week. And
glad to be here.
Give us a little background again on yourself personally and your career.
25-year. I'm not a native of Owen Sound, but when you've lived in a place for the most in your life, it's about as close as you can call it. So Owen Sound's been great for me and my family. We moved here from Halifax back in 1999. We've had 3 kids here, and I'm one of the partners at the Alliance Lawyers here in Owen Sound, and we're a full-service law firm. And I think we're going to talk today about a little bit about family law, and it's an interesting topic, and it's a topic that is close to everyone's heart.
Mm-hmm. How did you get here, or why did you get here from Eastern Canada or the Maritimes to Owen Sound?
I was practicing with Canada's largest Eastern Canadian law firm, Stewart McKelvey Sterling Scales, now called Stewart McKelvey, and they have offices in each of the 4 Atlantic Canadian provinces. And my wife is a speech-language pathologist, and about the only thing we knew about Owen Sound, they weren't hiring speech therapists in Nova Scotia. And I was ready to move to a smaller town. We wanted to go somewhere where we could buy a house. And the only thing I knew about Owen Sound is it was big enough to have the Platers.
Okay.
But
not long after you were here, they weren't the Platers.
Just after I moved here, they changed names. And no, it's great. And as you folks know, it's a great place, a great 4-season community. And we're overjoyed to have spent 25 years here and counting. So, the Alliance Lawyers, we have 4 lawyers here in Owen Sound. And we service Grey and Bruce counties, and a little bit of Simcoe. And we're kept very busy, and happy to come on here today and answer some questions about family law.
It's the Alliance Lawyers is a long-standing firm in Owen Sound.
Yep.
It's had a few names in the time, but it's now the Alliance Lawyers.
Yeah, we get tired of changing names every 3 to 5 to 7 years. So now, even though the lawyers change, we keep the same name, and we stretch back over 100 years. And we've had several judges appointed from the firm that we're proud to say, and a great. We're very, very fortunate to have a wide client base, basically in Grey and Bruce County. That's where we do our business.
This is Living Well, Giving Well on Rogers Television. Grey Bruce. Erroll, we're talking about legacy gifts to begin with, and before we get into the primary topic of today, the importance of a will. From a lawyer standpoint, and even from a personal standpoint, tell us about the significance and the absolute need that somebody should have one.
Don't leave grief for your friends and family, would be my message to anyone. So no one wants to think about it, but putting your affairs in order is essential, and it's essential, as I've said earlier, not because we know we're going to eventually die, but because any of us could suffer an accident. It's amazing just how quickly life can change. I saw someone almost get hit by a car this past weekend. It was in front of me. It was over before it began. A car hit a curb, and if that car had come over the curb, he would have been hit. So we don't like to think about it, but planning is essential. And again, think about your friends and family. If you have anything to leave anyone, do it right.
And then we talked, that the wills are one thing.
Yep.
And that you have a trustee to look after that. Used to be executor and a different, names, estate trustee.
Yep.
But the funeral is, a different thing. But that trustee can take care of that for you too. However, once again, just like the will, wouldn't it be nice for your family to be able to have that you would have that all done for them. So when they're grieving the loss of their mom, dad, child, whatever it may be, they don't have to be dealing with that situation.
Absolutely. You want to do as much as you can in advance.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's peace of mind involved, is there not, when you do get it done?
I think the older you get, the more important it is to have everything in order. Yeah, okay. For sure.
And we talked about this a few episodes ago, and that as we get older, that's when we think about maybe we should do a will. But the thought process, my son, who's 32 years of age, with the wife, with the home,
Yeah.
they should have a will as well.
Absolutely. Anyone with children, anyone with anything to leave or with children should have a will, for sure.
So now we get into kind of, I think, kind of a tough, what I would call tough topic when you're talking about separation and divorce. And is there the difference between, let's say, a husband and wife separating and divorcing and a common law couple separating and divorcing?
Huge differences, and in Ontario, and of course that's what we're talking about here, for the law changes from province to province, but right now in Ontario, the combination of the Family Law Act and the Divorce Act basically tells people what will happen when there's a divorce. And I guess what I would do is start by saying that for people who are just living together or getting married, the first thing they should consider is whether or not they should have a marriage contract or a cohabitation agreement. For a young couple that doesn't have anything, it's probably not that important. But especially if there's a disparity of resources coming into the relationship, they should give some thought to that. If someone is just living together, they should think about a cohabitation agreement. It's almost essential. A cohabitation agreement automatically becomes a marriage contract if they decide to get married, and it automatically becomes a separation agreement when they separate. And you might laugh, what do you mean when they separate? Well, the answer is even if they stay together for their entire lives, someone's going to die.
Right.
And death is an event of separation. It's usually irrelevant, but the law treats it as if you were divorced, which is fine if you leave your wife everything in your will, or she leaves everything to you, it's not an issue, but you can't leave a spouse less in your will than they would be entitled to receive if there was a divorce, because death is an event of separation. So it's kind of interesting.
I think an interesting, years ago, I'm talking years ago, we had nothing when we started, literally.
Yep.
We had the 4 spoons, the 4 knives, the 4 forks. I tell my kids. Nowadays, the kids are getting married later,
Yep.
or living together longer, starting their lives together later. So they have stuff, or they have things that need to be figured out where it needs to go.
Right, and if they're getting married, the law already provides in Ontario that you get a credit for what you brought into the marriage. So that's fine. But unless there's an agreement, the increase in the value of all of those assets during the marriage is divided. So what's essential is when people are getting together, whether or not they're deciding to live together or deciding to get married, is what are we going to do if this doesn't work out?
Right.
Right? What are we going to, and they don't want to think about that.
I was going to say, does anybody think about that, Erroll?
Well, if they come and talk to me, they will. Because if they're aware of the statistics, and someone could die. right? Someone could die. Everything could go along fine, but someone could die, and if there's no provision for the other in their will, then they should have had an agreement.
And I think that's most people are looking at it going, well, what do you mean this isn't going to work out? No, it could be death.
It could be death,
yeah.
or even if it's we all see the statistics, but it's like 50% for
Right.
marriages, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right. And then, of course, when you have children, that adds a whole other dimension that I've seen it where the children suffer greatly, whether it because the parents haven't figured it out mentally and financially. How does that work with kids?
The way it works is in the event of disputes, the courts will make rulings based on what they determine to be in the best interests of the children, which is the way we all want it, okay? But if there's a separation, I said to someone recently, I said, can you think of any greater indignity than a judge telling you when you can and can't spend time with your kids? Yeah. So hopefully, I just encourage people to be adults. They don't have to stay married. They can go their separate ways. But once you have children, you've got children for life. Right. And courts don't care about the parents. Courts care about the kids. Again, that's the way it should be.
Right.
They want to make sure that the kids are taken care of, and that's what we all want.
So if or hopefully, everybody can act as adults, and it could be decided before it has to go to the courts. Is that the case, or do you see a bigger percentage still not getting along and having to go to court?
Well, I can only comment on the cases that I'm involved in,
yes.
But it's less than 5% ever end up in front of a judge for any kind of motion or ruling. So very few cases go to trial, and you need to remember that there's very little to argue about in a matrimonial separation. You can argue about what's there, what is it worth, and when it comes to the children, are these people both basically capable parents? Right? Because if they're not, why wasn't the Children's Aid Society involved earlier?
Right.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
But assuming they each, see, it's not a beauty contest. It's not who's the best parent. Do they both meet the minimum basic parenting standards? And normally, if they were fine with each one caring for the children during the marriage, unless that's the reason for the separation.
Okay.
Right?
Fascinating conversation today on Living Well, Giving Well. Our guest is Erroll Treslan from the Alliance Lawyers. Coming up, we've got a feature video from Centre Grey Health Services, the foundation at Markdale for Markdale Hospital. Our sponsor today, or our host charity, is the Women's Centre of Grey Bruce. Please stay with us. We'll be back with more, talking with Erroll Treslan today. You're watching Rogers TV, Grey County, and Living Well.
Hi, I'm Harvey Fraser. I'm chair of the Centre Grey Health Services Foundation. We have a brand new hospital in Markdale, but the government only funded 90% of the bricks and mortar. The remaining, all the equipment, right down to the chair you sit in, is funded locally by local donors from our community. State-of-the-art equipment is very important, especially this day and age, because healthcare is changing so rapidly. Equipment that you bought 10 years ago is already antiquated, not up to date. So you're constantly in a process of replacing equipment because of the state of the art. And that state of the art is a good thing, because that saves lives. And that's why we're all here, is to do what we're doing, is to provide funding for this state-of-the-art equipment. If you don't have that equipment, you have a difficult time getting doctors to come to your area and possibly even retaining them if you don't keep ahead of the curve of state-of-the-art equipment. We need your support. It's important that we continue to raise dollars. So our donors are very, very important to us, individuals, businesses, that they continue to support us, because, like I said, you never stop raising money for healthcare. If we didn't have donors, none of this would be possible. So I thank all our donors. Every time you ask for something, they always step up and make the job that much easier.
Thank you very much, everybody, for staying with us. This is Living Well, Giving Well on Rogers Television, Grey County. Wherever you happen to be watching, whether it's in Grey or in Bruce or in Simcoe County, we hope that you will consider making a legacy gift in your will. Before we get back to Erroll Treslan today from the Alliance Lawyers to talk about wills and the importance of our wills, just want to read a quick note that we got in the mail from the United Way of Bruce Grey. And a portion of it says, many in our community, like the Mayettes, have taken the additional step to provide for those future generations by extending their support of United Way through a legacy gift, usually a gift in a person's will or estate that they have decided they wish to their support of our community to reach in the future. So once again, that's what Denise and I are talking about long term here, whether it's United Way or whether it's the soccer group or all the things that Erroll's involved in, or the Women's Centre of Grey Bruce, which is our host charity today. Please consider leaving a legacy gift in your will. And thanks for watching Living Well, Giving Well.
Well, and I'm glad we're getting that feedback. I mean, our first few episodes, we had asked our viewers if you have any questions or concerns or want more answers, you know, to reach out to us. I don't think we've had any where they've needed the responses, but it's sure nice to get that response from the United Way.
And it's just one example of the many charities and many organizations that we're supporting. Erroll Treslan is our guest from the Alliance Lawyers. Erroll, we were talking about separation and divorce. What's the primary area that you should go to first? We've talked about children. Maybe that's number one, or is it property, or is it finances? Where should people be focused when they're setting things up in advance for the unfortunate event of maybe separation or divorce?
Well, no, people don't normally decide in advance what's going to happen with children. And there's a good reason for that, because the only thing that really matters is the situation when it occurs, okay? So there clearly is a presumption of maximum time with both parents. Does that mean it's going to be 50-50 sharing? Not necessarily, but it's usually the case if the parents can accommodate it. But normally parents, I mean, who knows what's better for their children than the parents themselves? So courts would like the parents, and the courts will bend over backward to encourage the parents to settle those issues themselves. But if you can't and you throw it in front of a judge, that's what they get paid for, and they will give you the best decisions they can based on the evidence that's presented to them. In
a lot of, like child support, spousal support.
Yep.
You know, you hear those words out there, and does somebody, you know, depending what spouse, pay both spousal support and child support?
Yeah, and consider them differently. So when people break up, there is the property side of things, and that's pretty straightforward. Okay. And unless there's an agreement, the legislation will tell you how that's going to be dealt with. We're talking about married couples now, because of course the problem is, just to digress for a second, in a common law situation there are no rules. So what's going to happen to the property if they break up? Well, if the property's in both of their names, then it's pretty straightforward. But if it's not in both their names, it can be very, very problematic.
And that's why they need to have a pre.
Should definitely.
Yeah.
You should, if they're living together for any period of time beyond, let's say, a trial, 6 months or 1 year,
right,
they definitely should have a cohabitation agreement, if not before they begin to live together.
Right.
But so again, the three issues are property, and that depends on if you're married or you're not married. But then the other issues are spousal support and child support. Of course, it's the child custody. Child support and child custody go hand in hand. So depending on which parent the child is living with or children are living with and the parent's income, that determines if the person has to pay child support. So there are child support guidelines, essentially meat charts based on what's your income, this is what you pay in child support. Spousal support is a far more complex area than child support because it's not straightforward. The classic situation of spousal support would be wife doesn't work and has 4 children, and father goes to becomes a doctor and she supports his career.
The father is Tom Brady.
Yeah, exactly. but essentially what courts try to do in the short and midterm, they try to equalize not only property but income. And that depending on the income of the parties, that will often involve payment of spousal support. And let's say for any relationship beyond, maybe there's an original cutoff of say 4 years. But if you're together for anything longer than that, and if you can prove a pattern of dependency, then the higher income earning spouse will have to pay spousal support to the lower income earning spouse. And that can be a woman paying a man or a man paying a woman, but each case is specific depending on the facts, and basically what courts try to do is produce results that are fair.
Okay, and that was my question, right on the tip of my tongue, Erroll. In your opinion and experience, are the judgments fair? Or
and I do most of my advocacy in the Superior Court of Justice, our judges are excellent.
Okay.
They are the cream of the crop, they are smart, they try to be fair, they're empathic, and in the few times, again, my job is to keep my clients out of court, and that's the job of all litigators, to keep your client out of court. You only go to court if you have no other alternative. You try to settle the case. If you can't settle the case and you figure your client can get a better result in court, that's when you go to court, and that's when cases end up in trial. But I'm in trial maybe once or twice a year.
Yeah.
Okay, I was going to say extremely rare.
Extremely rare.
And I think, best interest of the kids, if you don't have to go that far, or of the parents and that too. And when it comes to when it's decided, okay, this is how much spousal support, this is how much child support, when does that end?
Well, it can be varied. And depending on child support lasts until your children are no longer dependent, which for many people goes beyond age 18.
Okay.
And
Nowadays,
normally there's a pattern of dependency there that'll continue into the first post-secondary degree or diploma.
Right.
And let's face it, a kid who's at university is more of a financial burden than one who's living in your home. But it's kind of funny. There's no law that says that you have to contribute to your children's university education, but somehow it changes if there's a separation or divorce.
Really?
Isn't that interesting?
Because parents will be required to contribute. They don't have to pay everything, but and the child is expected to make a contribution through either work or scholarship or loans. But I often recommend a third. The parents have 2/3, but that 2/3 may be divided. That's simply assuming equal incomes. But if it was equal incomes, each separated parent would contribute a third and the child contribute a third.
I'm giggling because if my parents were watching, if they were still on Earth, they would probably say, we paid them this much money to go to university and we didn't have to?
I think that common sense, we all think that's out there, but sometimes it's not. And I would think that could cause a bit of a problem when you're trying to deal with parents that are probably they're not happy, or the kids aren't happy or whatever. But if we could all use the common sense and just go with what is best for the children.
Yeah, and the problem is in cases of separation and divorce, sometimes the kids are estranged from one of the parents. And what I always encourage, I think the best thought process that was ever provided to me is you need to remember that the kids are half mom and half dad. And whatever flaws the other parent has, they can't voice those flaws to the children because they're harming the children when they do that. And you need to take, I always encourage my clients to just take the high road. And there, you can go on and do on what you can take your spouse off your Christmas card list, but the kids can't.
No.
And the problem in these situations is the kids invariably feel like protecting the spouse that they feel has been wronged. Yeah. And we have to I try to encourage my clients to just keep the kids out of it as much as you can. Yeah. And courts want that as well.
For sure.
If a judge catches wind of someone using the kids against the other spouse, it can get really nasty, and it should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think big, when I've seen, in the, families and that, and I always give those parents credit who are separated or divorced that don't do that. that they're making sure that each parent is seeing, it's all, and they might be talking about it to, behind later, but not to their children. And they develop quite nicely then.
And most people do. Most
I'm glad
people
to hear
do.
that.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, for sure.
It's interesting because I had a friend go through that situation, and what he said between him and his ex and their new respective partners was now there were 8 sets of eyes looking after the 2 boys in this case, as opposed to just the 2 of them. So there was a benefit. It's not that we're advocating separation or divorce, but it can work with some positive benefits.
Yeah. Do children have a say? Can they say, oh, I want to, I know it depends, a 5-year-old saying, I want to be with mommy, or as compared to a 15-year-old saying, I want to live with dad. Do they have a say in where they can go?
They do. And in Ontario, we have the Office of the Children's Lawyer, which literally will appoint a lawyer to represent the child or children at appropriate ages. And it depends on the age, it depends on the kid, obviously. It can be, as young as 8. And I would say as old as 12. Okay. But again, the kid can voice their preference, but what needs to be understood is, well, why are they voicing that preference? We don't ask the kids whether or not they want to go to school. So if they don't want to visit with mom or dad this weekend, well, why do they get to choose that? So we make decisions for kids, and spending time with a parent, unless there's abuse alleged and proven, and abuse is often alleged, seldom proven.
Okay, all right.
Right?
Okay.
But unless there's a good reason why those kids shouldn't be spending a lot of time with both parents, they should spend a lot of time with both parents.
Erroll, we're smoking right along here on this edition of Living Well, Giving Well. I think it's important that we stress the value of the will, the significance of the will, and pre-planning.
For sure.
Well, I think that if we can get the will done, once again, when we are doing not a favor, but doing it for our family, and that when it comes time, then they can deal with the grief they're dealing with. But also, we have that opportunity. I kind of feel a little empowered about it. If I'm going to do my own will and be able to get my family to, whether it's a donation to an organization or not, I think it's a good thing for us to do.
Yeah. Erroll, thank you so much for joining us today on Living Well, Giving Well on Rogers Television, Grey County. Again, our host charity is the Women's Centre Grey Bruce, a great charity that we've been happy to spotlight on this edition and previous editions of Living Well, Giving Well. We also want to thank Centre Grey Health Services, the foundation in Markdale, the Markdale Hospital, which could use volunteers and legacy gifts as well. Please consider that in your will. And join us again. Tyler Leighton from Sound CPA will be joining us on our next edition of Living Well, Giving Well, right here on Rogers, Grey County. Oh.
Connect with us by visiting our website or email us at comments@rogerstv.com.
Hi, I'm Bruce McDonald, forward for the Owen Sound Attack. Rogers TV is the official broadcaster of the Owen Sound Attack. Catch all of our games live on Rogers TV, Georgian Bay.